Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webcast, Creating a Successful Asynchronous Training Program for Your Learners, sponsored by Cypher Learning. This webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credit. You will receive an email from hr.com within 2 business days. It will include the certification credit information. You may also log into your account and view the credits that you have received. If you have any questions during the webcast, click on Q&A in your webinar controls and type them in. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to our presenter, Graham Glass.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's very nice to be here with you. My name is Graham Glass. I'm the CEO of Cypher Learning, and we have this a learning platform which is used by people around the world. And so one of the things that we get involved with is people trying to decide how they actually going to use learning platforms to teach synchronously, asynchronously, or somewhere in between. Now, the reason that I actually started the company was because I used to be, well, I guess I still am, an educator. So I personally taught thousands of people, both in the higher education. So I used to teach at UT Dallas, and also in the corporate world. So I was teaching all over America. And so a lot of what I'm going to say today is based on my own personal understanding. I've taught thousands of people, and also based on our understanding working with thousands of people around the world. So here's what's going on right now. Obviously, COVID's been very unpleasant and continues to be, but it's definitely accelerated a lot of remote learning. So if you've got kids, you know this very well. Your kids are working from home, if you're lucky, or if you're in the corporate world, then you'll be, instead of maybe flying in for a training session, maybe you're doing more stuff online. But it's forced people to think a lot more deeply than they ever used to about what's the best way to actually teach people when you're not in the same room at the same time with them. And we've seen a lot of attempts at this to various degrees of success. So some people do very old school. They just take what they used to do and they put it into a PowerPoint and then say, okay, click through this PowerPoint. And other people, of course, are much more creative and sophisticated about the way that they've done things. So what I wanted to do is to put together a kind of a taxonomy of different ways and different styles of teaching. And hopefully this will be very useful for you when you're doing your own remote learning. So before we get started, we're going to do a quick poll. So hopefully you'll see a little poll here on your screen. And go ahead and click on this thing. So biggest challenges, basically, you don't have an integrated solution, or maybe your learners are not engaged. Maybe you want to track skills development more, or you want to create the content more effectively. So let me know what you think. And I think the results will pop up hopefully fairly soon. And I'm not allowed to vote, but if I could vote, I would probably say keeping learners engaged. That's just me. Hopefully I'm not having a problem keeping you engaged. That would be sad. Okay, oh, interesting. So yeah, keeping learners engaged actually got 71%, which is interesting. That's actually what I was predicting. So that is actually very interesting. Thank you. The nice thing is I'm definitely going to address that particular one. Now, Kathy, can you close that? Okay, great. Thank you. Uh-oh, what's happened to my screen now? Okay. So thank you very much for that. That's very handy. So here's what I put together as a taxonomy of different kinds of training. So the one on the left is what you might call the old school, which is still very effective. So that's in-person synchronous training. And that's what I used to personally do most of the time. So I'm in a class with my students at college or a corporate training session. You're there with people hanging out together and talking. And that's what a lot of people can no longer do. Now, the next one will say synchronous, but you're not actually in person. So that's what a lot of kids are doing, for example. So most of the schools that I'm aware of and parents I know with kids, it's basically you still go, you're still in the class with your teacher and all the kids. It might be at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. in the morning through Zoom, and then you're just talking just like you were in class, which we found empirically does not keep people engaged very well. You think it would because you're all in the same room at the same time, but a lot of people get Zoom fatigue and they get distracted and so on and so forth. The next step is what we call pure asynchronous. So that's the one where I create some kind of online course, and I'm never, ever going to be with my learners talking with them or Zooming with them. So it's kind of fire and forget, pure asynchronous. And this is actually a pretty common one in corporation. So you get some link that says you got to take a training course, you take it, click, 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 and then you're done. And you never actually talk with the instructor at all. And then the last one, which is the most sophisticated one, which we'll go into a bit more detail, is hybrid asynchronous. And this is the one that we actually kind of prefer. This is the one where a majority of the time you're doing things on your own, but there are times where you come together. And so you have a one-on-one Zoom chat with either fellow students or with your instructor. And the hybrid async model is the one that actually seems to be the most successful generally, especially in corporations. So just go a bit more detailed for each one. So the in-person synchronous, as I mentioned, this is kind of the pretty common model. The nice thing is you actually get to bond with your learners and instructors quite nicely. So I found that I struck up a lot of friendships doing that. You go out for dinner together, go out for lunch together. It was really enjoyable, but it's really tiring. And so I personally was doing a lot of flying around to North America and hours in the airport and staying in hotels. And it's pretty expensive as well. With the pure asynchronous, it is nice that you can just go at your own pace, which is nice. Massive online courses where you've got 10,000 people taking a course. This is pretty much the only practical thing to do because you can't have 10,000 people chatting with their instructors. But there's like almost no connection with fellow students or instructors at all, and not that engaging. So here's the second poll, and this is there's only 2 polls on this thing, so this is the second one. And the question to you is, what kind of training do you do? Do you do mostly in-person synchronous, synchronous remote, pure asynchronous, or the hybrid async? My guess is that pure asynchronous is going to win, but let's find out what the results are. And I know within Cypher Learning, when we're giving training, we usually do hybrid async, which means that we're incorporating real-time Zoom sessions and that kind of thing as well. Okay, and the winner is, oh, interesting. It's actually not an obvious one. So synchronous remote looks like it's the winner, which means that there's a lot of Zoom involved, people chatting one-on-one at the same time. So I guess it was, and then pure async was the second, and then in-person and the hybrid async were the third. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. Thank you for that. So just to go into a bit more detail, the hybrid async, that's the one where you are going at your own pace, but every now and again you synchronize up with the instructor, and then you actually, chat with them when you need to. And this can actually be either scheduled. So sometimes people will say, hey, every Wednesday afternoon between 2 and 3, you're going to have a one-on-one with your instructor. And sometimes it's on demand. So, hey, go at your own pace, but if you get stuck, press this button and we'll have a Zoom meeting right then and there. And it's also really good if you understand like 90%, but you've got a few questions, that you can make a note of them. And then in your hybrid session, you can ask the instructor. So it's a really nice one. So that's the first part of the taxonomy. But now we're going to go a bit deeper into the asynchronous component of this. So interestingly enough, there's a lot of different ways to do asynchronous training. So there's what we call linear autoplay, linear with hurdles, random access, and it's slowly getting more sophisticated, static branching, and then dynamic branching. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each one of these, and I'm going to kind of describe how they fit into the taxonomy. Now, if you've used LinkedIn Learning, you're already familiar with linear autoplay. And this is the favorite for coffee lovers, because basically what you do is you go to the course, you get your cup of coffee, and at the beginning you click go, play. And you have a whole series of modules, and those modules are all essentially bite-sized videos. They might be, just a few minutes. And once one is finished playing, it'll pause for a few seconds and then go to the next module. So it's a really, really simple way. It's quite enjoyable, but some of the problems are you might be going and you might have questions and there's no one to talk with, or you think you know it, but you really don't. And then you get steadily more confused as it goes through. But it is very, very easy thing to put together. The only real main work you've got to do is to create the videos in the first place. And there's so many good video tools these days, that's not too bad. So that's linear autoplay, the easiest one. Now, linear with hurdles is another pretty simple one to do. But what you do is you watch 1 or 2 videos, and then there's some form of assessment, which is normally a self-grading quiz. So it might ask you, based on the last video, out of these 10 questions, which ones, true or false? And you can add a condition in there, which says you can't go to the next module until you've got 8 out of 10, for example. So the nice thing with this is that you are gating people and you're hopefully preventing them from thinking they're knowing stuff and not actually knowing it. And if they get stuck, they can always rewind and take the quiz again. So this is a very, very simple version. Some people do a little slightly hybrid version where one of the assessments, for example, might be a written assessment where somebody actually has to score it so you can go. That's a more sophisticated version. But quizzes are really the most popular ones. Now, I noticed there is a chat thing here, so I have to go out of here. Oh, sorry, I thought there was a chat, but it's not. Okay, going back to this then. So that's linear with hurdles. Then we have the random access. So this is one where if you just kind of like to dart around, and I'm going to do module 3, then module 1, then module 4, this is the so-called random access. So, and since it's random access, there's no preconditions. So you can say, I'm going to do module 2, check that off and finish that. I can have module 3, then I can finish that. And even though there's no preconditions, you can still have quizzes at the end of the module in order for the module to be considered completed. So this is a nice one if there's no natural sequence to the individual modules. You can just make it random access. You take it at your own pace, and then you test out at the end of each one of these modules. The next one, which is a little bit more sophisticated, is static branching. So the general idea here is let's just say that there are 3 topics in the course. And in topic number 1, it really makes sense to go module 1, module 2, module 3. You would never go 3, 1, 2, for example. So what you can do is you can organize the course. So at the beginning of the course, it says, click the thing you want to do next. And if there's topic 1, it might go module 1, 2, 3. Then you complete that kind of learning path, if you like. Then you go back and then you can pick the next one, do that learning path, then go back. So everyone ends up taking the same content. It's not adaptive in the sense that it doesn't show you modules based on your performance, for example, or your interests. So you know that by the end of the entire course, everyone has taken the same content, but you just give them a little bit more freedom in terms of which order they can go. So that's static branching. And then dynamic branching is the one that's probably the most sophisticated, probably the least common, but in some respects, it's actually the most sophisticated. So the general idea here is that rather than saying everyone is going to take the same content, you make it somewhat personalized. So for example, you can say only show this module if they have a particular job role, or only show this module if their quiz scores from earlier on in this course were not that great. And if their quiz scores are fantastic, then just skip this module completely because it's too basic. So that's kind of the personalized adaptive approach where what you see is based on your prior history, any other information that we know about you. So because of that, you can no longer guarantee that everyone takes exactly the same module because it's going to vary by person. And you can also actually take them through the course in a different order based on their interests or their learning styles, etc. So this definitely requires the most work for anyone who's actually created courses like this. The nice thing, though, is that modern platforms do make it a lot easier to do than they used to be. So, for example, in Cypher Learning, we've got a course which is kind of a welcome to Cypher Learning course. And we've taken this dynamic branching approach so that if somebody joins the company and their job title is software engineer, they might see different modules in the welcome than if their job title was marketing person or salesperson. And it wasn't really that difficult for us to do. So before I go to the next part, which is forgetting about technology, I just want to refresh what we've done so far. So I'm skipping back because it's always good to kind of recap. So to recap what we've done so far, there is a spectrum from in-person synchronous all the way through to hybrid async. And hybrid async is probably, the most sophisticated one. And then within asynchronous, there are various styles, from the fire and forget, drink your coffee, linear autoplay, all the way through to the more sophisticated dynamic branching. And I think if you read, when people talk about the future of learning, everyone's talking about dynamic, adaptive, personalized learning. That's like the holy grail of learning. So the dynamic branching is the one that takes the most getting used to, but it's the one that looks the most promising in the long term. So now let's take a break from simply the pathways and the delivery mechanism and talk about other important topics like keeping people motivated, or making it feel like you're part of a sense of a community, or allowing interaction with each other. And I know, virtually all of you, I would assume, actually, probably all of you, are familiar with what it's like these days and the challenge of keeping people engaged. And remember, when we did the poll, that was the number one thing. How do you keep people motivated? So let's focus on that particular area for a little bit. So one of the things generally you want to do is you want to make courses fun, entertaining, unpredictable, and somewhat social. And, for all of us who are kind of stuck in our offices, humans are very social animals. We actually really enjoy chatting with other people or seeing other people and talking with other people. So here are a few techniques that you can use to achieve this kind of thing. So I'm going to talk about automation, adaptive learning, and mastery rules, or if you might use the term competency rules. So the general idea with automation is that rather than the course being boring, where you start it and you just go click, 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 you want to almost script your course as if you were like a storyteller or a movie maker. So for example, you might want to say, hey, when you enroll in the course, I'm going to start by sending you a customized message. Hey, Graham, it's really nice to see you in the course. And rather than having it happen immediately, because people will then say, oh, it's just an automation, maybe say 2 minutes after you enroll in the course, send them a customized pop-up with a video welcome, which introduces them to the course. So you might, as a learner, you go, oh, that was nice, kind of unexpected. An obvious one that you want to do is once they've completed the course or completed a particular module, to give them some positive reinforcement, like, hey, you get a badge for doing this, congratulations, you get a certificate of completion, which is personalized. Those ones are really simple. Gamification is another one where some platforms have very limited support. For example, only when you complete a course do you get a badge, whereas other platforms are more sophisticated, where congratulations, you just finished that quiz with over 90%. We're going to give you 10 points towards a game that you're in. Hey, you just finished this module with flying colors. We're going to give you this little badge and 50 points. Or congratulations, you just passed level 1 in the leaderboard, and now we're going to give you a 10% off coupon to your company web store or something like that. So done right, because you don't want to have game points for like every single thing that you do. Done right, you can introduce an element of surprise and delight in your courses, where unexpectedly they get little pop-ups with customized badges and points and levels and this kind of thing. So gamification, welcome messages, completion, that's all stuff that goes a long way. And one very interesting thing, Cypher Learning is a little bit unusual because our products span K through 12, and then we have a separate product for corporate. And when we released gamification a long time ago, we thought that the audience who would like gamification the most would be kids. So we were assuming that in our K through 20 platform, it would be like children who would enjoy it the most. The interesting thing is that gamification was way more popular in corporations around the world than it is with kids. And in fact, corporations use it the most, followed by universities, higher ed, followed by children. It's like the complete opposite of what I thought it was going to be. So I thought that was quite interesting and eye-opening. So once again, using gamification goes a long way. What about adaptive learning? So, some people get quite irritated when they're taking remedial material where they clearly know it already, and they'll just say, this is a waste of my time. Why do I have to take this module before? I've already done this module 3 times before. So if you do it right, you can make people a lot happier by automatically hiding materials that don't make sense, automatically revealing advanced materials if they're doing really well, or releasing materials based on automation. So for example, you could do something where once you've completed the first 4 modules of the course, you get a pop-up which says, congratulations, because of your great score, we're now going to allocate you this advanced module that very few people ever make it to. And you're like, wow, that's actually really cool. I wasn't expecting that. So not only can automation be used for setting rules for when you get points and badges and what happens when you complete a module, but you can also use automation to hide and show individual sections, modules, videos based on how people are going. And so because of this, you can start designing these personalized pathways. Now, caveat, obviously this takes a bit more thought. And as I mentioned earlier, I used to do a lot of training. Me personally, I've taught thousands of people. So whenever I created a course, I like to put on my storyteller hat and think, I'm kind of telling people a story about this material, and I want to make it a fun story. It's like a learning journey. I know it sounds corny, but I really did think that way. So what can I do along the way so that everyone really enjoys what's going on and just doesn't find it, incredibly tedious? So adaptive learning based on things like automation is a really great technique for making your courses more fun. The third thing here is something called mastery rules or competency rules. Now, a lot of people these days are getting into competency-based learning. And the general idea with that is you have a set of skills or learning outcomes or competencies, it all means the same thing, that you want people to get good at. So ultimately, the purpose of the course is so you can get good at A, B, C, D, and E. So generally what you'll do is you'll create your modules with these competencies in mind. And in a lot of platforms, you can actually create a competency hierarchy inside the platform that's linked to all the various learning materials. So your system can actually say, hey, you've got these 4 modules, but this particular competence is not currently being covered. And you go, oops, yeah, I need to add this new section, link it to this competency. So at the end you go, okay, now I know that I'm teaching everything. And if you associate assessments with competency, so you might say this quiz is making sure that you know how Cypher Learning was founded. So that's the competency you're going to learn. As the learners go through the course and they're taking these assessments and getting exposed to materials, the platform can record your competency levels at all the different stages of the course. And then this can be used as part of the automation, which is really nice. So you can say, if you're falling behind in this competency for more than a day, then automatically, publish this remedial module to make sure that they have some more chances of getting good at this competency. Or you can say, if you're good at this competency, then hide this module because they clearly don't need to keep on learning the same thing again and again and again. And one of the reasons that we as a company love competencies, and that is it forces you from a learning approach to think through what is the point of this course in the first place. Here are the competencies. It forces you to link the competencies to the learning materials and the assessments. And then it gives you the ability to trigger additional automations based on your measured competency levels. Now, you don't have to use competencies. It's a completely optional thing. There's a lot of people who still don't think that way. But I know even when I was old school teaching at university without any technology at all, the first thing that I did when I created a course was write down a list of, here are all the things that I'm going to teach in this course, and then systematically made sure that I covered those things. So mastery rules is an additional level of sophistication. So when you combine all of these things together, then you can start creating courses that are really good fun. They have all kinds of surprises and delights in them. Now, I am actually going to show you an example of some of this stuff in action at the very end of this presentation. So we're getting, kind of towards the end, maybe another 10 minutes of chatting. And then I'm going to show you what it's like, just so you have an understanding that, hey, this stuff is actually quite cool. And I'm actually going to show you our own use of it for our own onboarding program. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea, going back, about some of the things that you can do to make learning more fun. So keeping the learners motivated. There is one thing actually that I want to discuss, which is the sense of community. So I did already talk about using automation to make the courses unpredictable, adaptive. But what about actually engaging with other users? And one of the things very early on, especially when COVID first hit, is a lot of people started just going pure remote. So they'd be at their home, sit down at their computer, and when they would log on to some kind of platform, they would see tiles, for example, for all the courses, but there would be no sense of community. Like, is anyone out there? I don't know whether nobody's in the course or a million people in the course. I have absolutely no idea. So one of the cool things that we decided to do was to add these little innocuous flashing lights on all the various different tiles for groups, for courses, for modules. And the idea is the more people who are currently in a particular module or in a particular group, the more this little flashing light would glow and it would kind of pulse. And so by doing that, people say, hey, I really like that, because when I'm actually online now, I've got a sense that things are happening. And then in addition, what you can do is you can have these little widgets that are embedded that actually show you what's happening. So if you're an instructor in your course, you can sit down at 10 p.m. and you can see a list of all the things that people are doing. Hey, Graham just logged in. Hey, Sally just entered this course. Joe just did the assignment. Now you've actually got a feeling like I'm actually part of something that's a community that's actually doing something, instead of this just very boring flat screen. And ditto for the learners. If you logged in as a learner and you're a kid or you're in a corporation, it's a lot more fun when you can tell, hey, one of my friends just logged in. One of my friends is now online. One of my friends just submitted a quiz. One of my friends just got a badge. Then you're like, hey, I'm actually part of a community. So I think that's just a little kind of out of the box example of technology does not have to be static and boring and isolating. It can actually help, done right, to create that sense of community, to allow people to actually interact more easily by seeing who's online, who's not, who's doing what. So I think there are definitely ways to encourage this. Another fun thing we can do where it says allow learners to interact. One of the things I'm going to show you is in our own onboarding, it is asynchronous, so you can onboard whenever you want, but there are steps in the process where you actually have to go to a discussion forum and actually post something about yourself. So you can do it anytime you want. And then when somebody else goes on, they'll see your response and they can go, oh, there's this new guy called Gregory who just joined in Malaysia. Oh, and look, here's a picture of him, eating sushi. So there are different ways to get people to learn about each other and know about each other, but still stay asynchronous. So I'm just skipping through those things. So one slide I'm going to finish with before I give a little demo is, where is all this stuff going? So it's quite clear now that people are getting more and more used to asynchronous training, whether it's very simple or very sophisticated. People are getting more used to hybrid work environments where I'm remote some of the time, I'm in the office some more of the time. And based on a lot of data, more and more people are actually going to choose to work remotely just because it's more convenient. They can buy houses in more affordable areas. So our feeling is that the future of learning and teaching is going to involve more AI, more machine learning, and more voice recognition. And we've actually been working on all this stuff. It's coming out quite soon, but this is just a more general trend anyway. So what I mean by this is, if you're using a learning platform, that learning platform is starting to learn about you. So it knows which things you're interested in, like he's interested in this particular job or this particular topic or this particular competency. They know that there are certain things that you're good at, some things that you're not good at. They know which resources are highly effective at raising competencies, which resources are not very popular. And we're not talking about resources just in the platform. We're talking about things on LinkedIn, things in Go One catalog, free forums, YouTube videos, etc. So you have this system that knows about more and more of this stuff. And if you're going to take advantage of that, ideally, the system should act almost like an assistant to you. So whether you're a child or you're in higher ed or you're in a corporation, the system where, hey, I know, here's a recommendation for you because I know that you're interested in biology, or you're interested in becoming a digital marketing manager, or in your current role, this thing might be useful for you. And the system can, prod you towards doing certain actions. You can say, I'm going to take that recommendation. I'm not going to do this. When you take recommendations, then it can measure you. And like 2 days later, it might say, hey, I'm just going to do a pop quiz for you, Graham. And I'll take the pop quiz, and behind the scenes, it's going, hey, he took the video 2 days ago and he still doesn't get it. So it might say, oh, that video is not, that video is not as effective as we thought it might be. Or, hey, he just aced that pop quiz. So that video obviously made a pretty nice impact on his abilities. So first of all, AI powered, we've been talking internally about the concept of intelligent learning platform, but the non-nerdy way to think about it is it's like a digital learning assistant, but also voice recognition. So people actually really enjoy talking to things. Like, I don't know whether a lot of people use Alexa in their home. I love just saying, hey, Alexa, play Talking Heads. I don't have to sit down at the keyboard and enter it all in. And so, for example, our system's got integration with Amazon Alexa, but more and more people are going to say, hey, tell me about something, or teach me X, and the system will talk back to you and actually, show you the videos, etc. So more and more talking, more and more artificial intelligence. I think it's all pretty safe bets. It's really just a question about when it's going to happen. And obviously, I think VR is going to have, or AR is going to have a big impact, but the gating factor there is very lightweight, affordable hardware combined with authoring tools that make it easy for the average person to create great AR learning content. So we're closing in on the 40-minute mark. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to switch over modes from PowerPoint mode, and I'm going to give you guys a little demo, a little taste of what this thing can look like. And it's not going to be salesy. Okay, I just want to show you, here's what this, here's what the user experience is like. And then we've set 10 minutes aside at the very end to do a Q&A session. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to switch my screen over to a different screen. So this just takes a second here. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna new share. Here we go. So hopefully what you guys can see is we branded it Cypher Learning Skills, but this is our own site built using our own technology that we use for onboarding people. Now in our company, onboarding is a challenge because we have a lot of people around the world in 16 different countries. So it's really important for us that when somebody onboards, that there is a nice, reliable, predictable, asynchronous way for them to learn all about the company. So I'm going to show you what we did to achieve that goal, but we used almost all of the different things that I mentioned to you in the presentation. So it's quite nice. It shows you like a real life version. So when I log in as a learner, I'm going to see a dashboard, and there's my to-do list, my calendar, all this kind of usual stuff. But I'm going to focus specifically on this one here. Welcome to Cypher Learning. So when you join the company and you're uploaded into our system, it knows what job title you are, where you're located, which department you're in. And we can use that basic information for doing a lot of various different kinds of personalization. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start taking the course. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it takes 20, 30 minutes, but I'm going to start through the course just to give you a feel for how it operates when I'm taking this kind of course. So I'm going to go in here and say start. And in this particular case, it's broken up into 10 different modules, and there is me right here. And as you can see here, this is the little activity thing I mentioned. So there's a little glowing green light here, but it's only faint. That means low activity. And it's low because I'm literally the only person taking this course right now. But if I logged in next week, this widget might actually be rotating quite quickly. And hey, Gabrielle just did this, Alina just did this, Ed just did this. So I immediately get a sense of who's taking this course and what's going on in the course, which is really nice in terms of creating a sense of community. Not only are we tracking progress through the course, but we're also tracking mastery. So we've linked all the various different aspects of what we want to achieve to the material. So as you go through, you can see how well you're achieving mastery of the competencies. And here is the leaderboard. So we've called this particular game Reaching the Top. And here are all the various people. These are various people in our company and how many points they've got and how many badges they've got. And also for fun, we divided people into teams. So we've got the sales team, the marketing team, the engineering team. And so not only can you see how you're doing in the leaderboard, but you can also see how you're doing into little teams. And these are very, very popular. I know some people poo-poo gaming and say, oh, it's just childish and this kind of stuff, but it really is great fun and very motivating. So, what I'm obviously right now, I've got 0 points, no badges. So let's get going and see what happens. So I'm taking the first module, and we do, notice here, welcome Graham, and welcome to the Cypher Learning. So one of the things that you can do is you can put in personalized content. So we create this little banner that will insert your first name in addition to the rest of the text. So it's right off the bat, it's like, hey, that's cool. It actually called me Graham. It didn't just have it generic. So that immediately gives you a feel for something. This is something a little bit unexpected. I'm only going to play this video for a couple of minutes. But what we did is we did a little video where each person around the world is a little welcome in their own language, which is so cool. And so once again, this is all about engagement. If you log in and you can see all the other team members welcoming you in their own language, that's really fun. So I'm going to complete this and continue. This does a little bit about our company story that I'm going to skip through, the vision and the mission. Let's keep going because I want to start showing you automation kicking in, a little bit about our products. I'm going to click forward. And you can see down here, this is my progress. And on the left, telling you a little bit around the world, but the next part is one of these quizzes as you go. So I'm not going to let you go to the next module until you've at least interacted. And in fact, before the quiz, we're going to have a little discussion. So it says, convince us to visit your country. Okay, I will. So let's have a look at the discussion. This is a funny one. I'm from Romania and I can't even tell you why. Don't act that fool you. Romania is actually a beautiful country. So I'm going to say, here's my posting. I'm Graham and I live in beautiful California. And if I had more time, I'd actually put a picture. Now notice that I didn't have to pass a quiz at this point, but it asked me to participate in something that everybody else will be alerted to. So this is something, it doesn't have to slow me down. It doesn't have to become synchronous, but I'm learning all about all the other people in my company without any, specific effort. A little org chart. And then the last part in module 1 is a little quiz. So we want to make sure that you absorbed a fair amount. So I'm going to take the quiz. Hopefully I'll do good. This is 2010. That's true. I'm just skipping through quickly. Okay, almost done here. So I just took the quiz. And we're going to, let's wait and see what happens. So the good news is I got 100%, which is good because I started the company. And we finished this particular module. And what you're going to see here, when I continue, pretty soon we're going to start getting some more automation-based activity. So I'm going to come down here, meet the team. Going. One thing I'm not, there should have been a little pop-up of a badges and points right now, so I'm not quite sure what's going on here. If the automation thing, by the way, doesn't pop up, then there's probably some setting I forget. The actual system is actually fine. And one of the things I want to mention as well is that some of these modules that I'm showing you are oh, here we go. Yeah, so I just got a badge for being highly focused, which is nice. And I also got some points from going through the system. So I was awarded 25 points. And so these are things that as I'm going through the course, I'm getting these points and these badges. And if I go back here to the very beginning, what you'll notice now is I'm 40% through, and now I've reached base camp with 125 points and 2 badges. So all of these things combined, the personalization part, the discussion forums where I'm connecting with other team members, the fact that I'm getting points and badges, and at the end, a completion certificate, all of these things go together to make the platform, make the course really good, fun to do. And now I'm going to show you how easy it was to do that. So I'm going to go from the instructor's viewpoint to this particular, the welcome course. So here are the modules that I created. And once you create a module, it's just as simple as coming through here and saying, when you complete this particular module, what do you want to do? So I can say, I want to award 50 points towards a game and have it as a pop-up. But let's just say I want to do something else. I want to send them a custom notification. So I come along and I say, I'm going to add, and I'm going to give you, these are all the things you can trigger. I want to give you a custom notification. Well done. Well done at user. So this is going to say, well done, Graham. Just as simple as that. So ultimately, just to kind of recap, when you create a course and you want it to be really good fun, you think like a movie maker, you think like an author, and you script the journey of your learner from the very beginning when they first enroll all the way through to the very end. And then you decide, what are the competencies you're going to learn? And here I can even come along and say, in this particular case, for this particular course here, just one second. Here are the various competencies, for example, understanding the structure of the course, understanding the products, meeting the marketing team. Link all the competencies together and use things like automation and adaptive learning to decide when do you get points, when do you get badges, when do you get a completion certificate, who sees this module, who sees that module, what do you do when you finish this module, how can you engage people by having things like discussion forums. So it takes a little bit of learning curve just to get used to the basic concepts. But once you've done that, it's really good fun creating courses. And I didn't create this particular course. These were other people in the company. But they actually had a really good time putting together the flow and all the various things that happened as they went through this course. So hopefully that's given you like a little taste of how easy this can be to do, how attractive it can look, and how fun it can be as a learner. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to unshare that. And we're going to go into Q&A time. And I'm going to be looking at the Q&A section here. But if you have any questions, you can either post them to the Q&A or I guess route them through Kathy. So one question I've got here is from Joseph: how would learners best retain what is taught, and how would you keep them learners motivated? So I think one of the things which is really nice is a certain amount of repetition and reinforcement. So, I remember when I was at high school, you don't learn things, you don't read it one time and then you're done. You want to start off by getting exposed to some material, maybe quizzing them, but then maybe one day later, or it could be 2 modules later, you turn around and go to the same thing again. And then maybe even once you've completed the course, you could have something which says, hey, 1 week later, put them into this mini refresher course where they go through those materials again. So I think the main thing is really, time-based reinforcement. There's a lot of research that the brain remembers things much better when it happens first time, and then the second time, and then the third time. And as far as the things about motivating, I think that acknowledging people, rewarding them when they achieve certain things is really good fun. That's the gamification concept. Doing things that are unexpected and delighting them is definitely very effective. And also figuring out ways to still allow asynchronous, but keep people engaged through things like discussion forums and Zoom meetings is another really, really fun thing. Okay, any additional questions?
Yes, Graham, we do have a couple of extra questions here. How do you go from doing completely synchronous trainings to asynchronous trainings?
Yeah, so that's a great question because it is a learning curve. But that's good because we're already good at learning and teaching, aren't we? So I would say, if I was going to make a recommendation to someone, I would say it's usually the best to start off going like doing in baby steps. And we've seen this happen with our customers around the world. So people normally say, well, I've got all these materials and they're videos and PowerPoints, and it's taken me 10 years to create this. What's the best way for me to start going online? So you can say, well, why don't you just start in the very first version of your course going pure async, 10 modules, break those modules up into bite-sized materials. So the first thing is you've got to be bite-sized. You can't have a 2-hour video in one module and you're done. But break it up bite-sized and let people start going through the course and let them give you feedback. That's a nice way to at least get started with very little effort. But then if you have access to things like automation, it's actually really, really easy to gamify a course. I mean, literally 10, 15 minutes. So just create a game, and throughout those materials, when they complete one or when they do good in a quiz, give them game points and badges. That's the next step. That's really, really easy. Then once you've got that and you start getting like, hey, this is actually quite easy. It's much better than I thought it would be. Then you can start doing things like sprinkle a discussion forum here, sprinkle a Zoom meeting. And then once you get beyond that, maybe you start getting into some adaptive learning where, hey, if you've already taken this particular material, hide it from the learner because I don't want to bother them. Or if they do really good in this quiz, reveal this material. So I would say there's baby steps along the way, but the gamification and the automation stuff, that's really quite straightforward. And the adaptive learning is probably the most sophisticated part. That's usually best left towards the end.
Great, thank you. Another question here. How do you develop soft skills with asynchronous training?
So there are different ways to do that depending on the sophistication level. So for example, I've seen some of our customers who have used simulators. So for example, one of them is like, it's like some kind of like, I don't remember whether it was FBI or CIA, like interrogation simulator. And it was actually really interesting. I took it and I learned quite a lot. But these are simulators that are from specialized third parties who make their software available through an industry standard called LTI. So you can plug them into any LMS that supports the industry LTI standard. And in their particular simulation, it was one where you'd walk into a room, there'd be, the suspect there, and it would say, here are 3 questions that you can ask the suspect. Which one do you want to ask? And based on what you ask, the person stands up and gets angry, or maybe they're sad, or maybe they're, just very neutral. And you go through the simulator and you're actually interacting with basically a piece of AI software. And I thought that was actually very interesting. That's the first time I had seen a human-oriented simulation in terms of the soft skills. And another one which is a lot less sophisticated is to use things like chat rooms and discussion boards. When you talk about soft skills, you're talking about how to interact with your fellow instructors, etc. But if you're talking about how do you have a course that gives you information on how to, learning how to be sensitive in certain corporate situations, that is one of the tougher ones. I would say the simulator is the best one that I've seen that is pure asynchronous. The other thing that sometimes people do is they'll have it's almost like having a sales session. So somebody will say, record a video that shows your response to this particular tough situation. So you record the video asynchronously. And then the next day, someone's taken a look at it and they go, okay, Graham, here are the issues that I saw. You did okay, but this was and they actually either give you back a video that shows how they would have done it, or they say, out of all the people taking the course, here is the one that I rated the best, so you can learn from them. So it's almost like a crowdsourced style approach. So those are the approaches that I've seen to be quite successful.
Thank you. We have one final question here. How do you track skill development with asynchronous training?
So yeah, that's a great question, and that's when you get into learning competencies. So if you think about a skill, let's take something like digital marketing manager. So digital marketing manager is a job title, and under that particular job, there are a whole set of competencies that represent, achieving that particular title. So digital marketing manager might be 40 competencies. And there are some, like Australian water management has 1,000 competencies. So to get certified in water management in Australia, you have to know 1,000 different things. But let's just go back to digital marketing manager. So you say, here are all the 40 things, and one of the subheadings might be SEO, and under SEO, there's like SEO tricks, for example. So the general idea is that if somebody either wants to get good at their current job title, or they would like to learn everything that's necessary for them to move to a different job title, the first thing you need to do is to have an entry in the platform, which is, this is the job, and here are all the competencies associated with that job. Now, at this point, the platform can say, okay, this is what they want. Now let's take a look at the measurement of those competencies. And the way that you measure competencies is through either assessment or through a third party basically saying, yeah, I know Graham and he's really, really good at this. Check the box. So it's not like the only way to know to be assessed is to take a quiz. But that being said, though, you would typically have big question banks or various different assessment tools that are all linked to those competencies. So somebody can go to a job title and say, I'm going to self-assess, click a button, and it will go through maybe a 20-minute process with you. And at the end, it goes, okay, well, you've got 70% of the competencies you're already good at, but those 30% you're not. Let me recommend some courses for you to take that will teach you those competencies and track them. So at this point, the platform is kind of assisting you towards mastery of all the competencies associated with that particular skill. So it's being proactive. It's telling you, here's what you can do next, like recommendations. And as you take these recommendations, which could be as simple as take a course, they might be have a 30-minute talk with this expert in Indonesia who's part of the company. It could be taking some third-party course on a different platform, makes no difference. You're continually being measured against those competencies towards these particular skills. And then when you get really close, 90, 95%, it might be, hey, congratulations, you've finally reached really good competency levels for this particular job or this particular skill. And then you can even set up a system to automatically generate a certificate for you or put you in touch with HR, whatever you do when you achieve that goal. But to circle back, I would say the biggest conceptual thing is mapping various different kinds of job titles or, bundles of skills. It could be, optimizing databases. It doesn't have to be a certain job, but crafting these competency maps, which will vary by industry, maybe even within your company, and then hook your platform up so it knows about those things, and it can make recommendations and track them and take action when you achieve those skill levels.
Thank you, Graham. That was the last question. We have a couple more minutes here. I don't know if you had a slide that you wanted to put up to share any contact information, if someone from the audience wanted to reach out to you afterwards.
Yeah.
And any final closing remarks for the webcast before we end off here?
Yeah, so what I will do, I will quickly go back to that, that thing you suggested, because I think there is actually one more slide. Ta-da! So my closing remark is thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to the presentation about different learning styles. I hope it was very educational for you guys. My email address at the bottom is Graham, like Graham Cracker, @cypherlearning.com.
Great, thank you. This concludes our webcast today. I would like to thank Graham Glass of Cypher Learning for this presentation, and thank you to all of you for joining us. If you joined in late and would like to view this webcast again, the recording and slides will be available in the hr.com archives within a few hours. If you're looking for your educational credit, that will appear in your account within 2 business days. We also send out an email with the credit information. Please take a few moments and fill out the webcast survey that will appear on your screen. Your feedback is very important to us. This concludes our webcast. Enjoy the rest of the event.